sort of do these together. We got one handout, pituitary hypophysis, this little bowl, the pituitary fossa of the sella turcica, just above the nasal sinus. Unfortunately, not the slime gland, something run out your nose, unless you crack it. Shouldn't be water coming out your nose. And then over here, looking at the stubby finger pointing down, pineal gland. Very minor for us, but it's still part of endocrine for our concerns. So let's take a look at the pituitary in gross section. Brain's up here, spinal cord off to your right, and right away, two entirely different tissues. So there's a great section showing adenohypophysis, anterior, about 75% of the mass. Big space, IG cleft, and then neurohypophysis, which is really just an extension of the brain, right down in the pocket, 25% of the mass. And then it's attached and controlled by this layer, hypothalamus. Get more on that. Neuro in the third component. And so remove the gland from the fossa, got that typical hammerhead look to it. The adenohypophysis, sort of swollen, enlarged, and then neurohypophysis back here. But as soon as you cut it open, then you know it's two entirely different tissues. Here's the adenocyte, glandular. IG cleft has a little glycoprotein in it, jelly-like material, inert. And then neurohypophysis posterior, with stalk connecting it to the hypothalamus. So when we magnify, we see this difference. Adenohypophysis having orange to reddish looking cells. Look around, darker basophils, sort of a blue to purple, 35%, 15%, and then a lot of them are not staining very much at all. About 50% are chromophobes. They don't sting very much because they're relatively inactive, sleeping acidophils and basophils. You got your IG cleft, intermedia, no ID, non-functional in humans, and then the neurohypophysis, really specialized nerve cells, neurons. If I describe something like a bluish, hazy pool, then you're talking herring body, which for us is the most important histological feature of the neurohypophysis. The herring bodies will be discussed in the future for lecture. All right. Then to really give you a good feel for acidophils, basophils, and chromophobes, let's say don't antagonize yourselves over this. It would be this compared to this, and then everything else in between. So if it's distinctly reddish, orange, acidophils, distinctly blue, purple, basophils, and then anything that's in between, little hazy, sleeping acidophils and basophils, call them chromophobes. Okay? So that's all you're looking for. And then the ones that aren't stained very well. Rarely are they absolutely translucent. That's all I want you to do for those acidophils, basophils, and chromophobes. Then move on to the thyroid, anterior neck, draped over the trachea, quite superficial. This one's enlarged 4 or 5 times. Talk about goiter, thyromegaly. Adam's apple right there, the larynx. Just below with this glandular butterfly draped over the trachea. And then more normal looking, remove this butterfly, anterior view, posterior view, and then include the little brown bits that you can find on the underside of the thyroid. One student, very proud of themselves, they were doing a really delicate dissection and actually found one of the apple seeds stuck on the wall of the trachea. It wasn't even embedded in the thyroid. It's like, well, he gets a little star, because most would have missed it. He just completely lost that on the tracheal side. So yeah, that's just a variant where it could actually be on the trachea rather than in the thyroid. Functions perfectly normal. So you got your parathyroids that you know you've got to have enough of that to make sure your diaphragm keeps working. Now that your diaphragm freezes up, you'll suffocate. Can't ventilate. So you take a look at thyroid. Good mood next week? You gotta have at least one of these. This is an easy one. Active thyroid jumps right out at you. Follicle, follicular cells, colloid within, and then the little bubbles around the edge, especially when it's active. Reabsorption lacunae. So I would accept Rehab-Lac. I hear that all the time. It's a Rehab-Lac indicating active thyroid biopsy. Shorthanding reabsorption lacunae. That's telling you things are being brought back into those follicular cells. Parafolliculars, will not ask you, but you really know your stuff. 2 and 3 years from now, if you know the thyroid has this forgotten endocrine cell within the parafolliculars. Mention them more in lecture.